Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Cantrip podcast. I'm TastySnackies, your host, and before I actually get started, let me just explain what it is and why I'm doing it. So, to be honest, I really don't know exactly what I want to do with this whole thing. I know for a fact that I want guests on this show. I do know for a fact that I want it monthly, and I do know for a fact that I want to be answering your guys' questions in here. That's three things I know for sure that I want. And the reason why I want guests is because I personally feel like it's better for me as a content creator to provide podcasts where I don't necessarily have to depend on a second person consistently. So for whichever episode, if I can invite a guest and get them on, great. Otherwise, it's just going to be me talking about random stuff, whatever. So I had a recording of me talking with Kevin from Rogue Deckbuilder, and I figured, that would be a great opportunity for the first episode of the podcast to show you guys what I mean by having a guest on. And after that, I'm going to be answering some of your questions. And also, you guys need to realize that this conversation that I had with him, it wasn't planned for like a podcast or anything. It was more or less just me and him shooting the shit. So, yeah, that's kind of the vibe that you're going to get. It's not like directed in like a certain direction or anything like that. It's just random talking. And there's going to be some like weird cuts. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I personally noticed because I edited it. But yeah, that'll answer the question why it kind of sounds like a bit jumbled or whatever, because I was trying to dance around another video that I had made previously with him where I was discussing his deck. So there's like a good 15-minute chunk of this conversation that's just gone that provided with context. If you probably don't want to rehear that same conversation that you already heard in a previous video, and I'm rambling at this point. So yeah, anyways, let's just go ahead and get into the first episode. Hope you enjoy.
Did you see Desolator's video, by the way?
About what?
The band.
I saw that he made 2 videos on it, and my first initial thought was he's just taking advantage of AdSense, which can't really blame him, but I haven't actually watched the videos yet.
Reflector Mage was banned because of Panharmonicon.
Oh.
Good to know.
Cool.
And
all right.
Smuggler's Copter was in every deck, including Aetherworks Marble.
Really?
According to him. Yep.
Interesting.
I had a good laugh over it.
That guy, man. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like after the bannings and everything, I'm surprised he didn't complain about vehicles, because one of the main complaints I heard about with Smuggler's Copter being banned was Thraben Inspector all of a sudden stops being the best one drop in the format. So, I don't know.
It's still good, though. It enables a lot of stuff in this new set.
Oh, yeah. Did he still ramble about net decking or combos?
Well, no, he thinks it's the best thing ever because now people are going to have to build their own decks.
Yeah, people are just going to build with the other infinite combos in Standard now, and then he's going to bitch and complain.
I think people are just going to go back to T-Merge. T-Merge and green-white tokens.
T-Merge and green-white tokens. I miss green-white tokens.
Because there's no point to run blue now, so I think they... I mean, Spellclaw's alright for the format, but green-white tokens is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
They're still going to be Gideon and Ishkanah. I think that now the bans just like make those 2 cards super good.
Alright, well, trying to think if there's anything else I could ask you for the deck. Since we talked so long, I think I might make this into a second video, actually.
Go for it.
I'll pull a Desolator and put out 2 videos in a day. But
2? Like 7?
Oh yeah, 7 separate videos, 20 minutes long about him rambling. Yep. I should just do that. That seems like a winning strategy. I mean, I may bitch about the guy, but he's successful somewhat, so can't really knock him.
Yeah. I want to do a frontier tour of Utah. And so I'm gonna have to learn how to have a nice setup, because I want to go to all the stores and just really try to promote it.
That'd be really cool. Have like a vlog series about it or something.
Yeah,
too.
exactly. I'll be at this store this week, and then just see if like some game stores are open to it, and then hold a championship somewhere, kind of like how Hiroyuya
That's
did.
really cool.
And then I also have I've been a few stores have reached out to me, seeing if I could collaborate with Frontier. I'm just like, I wish I like the personality part of YouTube and video, just commentating and stuff like that. I hate the editing.
Yeah.
It's like grinding teeth to me. I do not like trying to find, like, getting rid of pauses and splicing in pictures, and it's just so monotonous to me.
Right.
So,
that's one of the, because I kind of like arguing with people, and whenever I see somebody complain on like a Kotaku article about like YouTubers, and like you see like PewDiePie getting millions of dollars and stuff, and they're like, oh, they're just lazy YouTubers, and be like, well, hold on. I mean, granted, it's not hard work, it is monotonous, but it does require a decent amount of effort to like actually be a somewhat successful like YouTuber, or not a successful YouTuber, but to have a really good looking video, because you have to put in the time and effort to edit something, because I mean, Lord knows you don't really need the most amazing video quality to be the best YouTube, or to be the most popular YouTuber. But yeah, whenever people rag on YouTubers for not putting in any work, it's just like, man, you really don't know what you're talking about.
yeah. And plus, it takes a personality to be a personality. I mean, that's the whole. I know a lot of people over at like Gathering Magic have tried to do similar things, and they've just failed miserably. They could just never get the following or get the. We had a few people over there that tried to do like commentary, and they just so many pauses, and they couldn't talk and play. I mean, I get accused of making horrible mistakes while commentating, which I do, because it's, you're multitasking. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just so people need to appreciate that part of it. I wish I was actually closer to Gathering Magic, because they have a whole like editing team. Yeah. And so I could just record and give them. That's what I do for Gathering Magic right now. I record videos and then they edit them. Sweet. I don't even touch the editing.
Yeah, it was funny you were talking earlier about Gathering Magic. I'm making a video about discussing Cawblade and the dominance of Cawblade, and I, for research, was going through YouTube and trying to find a bunch of old videos of people talking about Cawblade, and I came across an old Gathering Magic video where it was two dudes talking about it, and it was probably the most painfully awkward video I think I ever watched. It was just like long pauses, and like they were staring directly into the camera. And just
you seen the TSG LSV discussion of it? Channel Fireballs?
No.
Someone linked it on Reddit, the subreddit, with when people were saying, is it really as bad as Cawblade was? And that was pretty good, other than I'm sure Channel Fireball doesn't want people watching it because it's got TSG in it. So.
Oh yeah, didn't he like get accused of stealing or something?
Yeah, it was messy. And then over 2 years later, someone picked up, I want to say Face to Face, or someone else picked up TSG, and Channel Fireball had a fit and basically demanded that if they didn't get rid of TSG, then they would cut all ties with them. And then so the company like released an apology thing and got rid of him. And
jeez,
so it's weird. I don't know the full story. I was friendly with TSG. He was big before I became like a relevant figure. So, but I remember I talked to him at my first Grand Prix because I was a fan of what he did. I liked his kind of style and whatnot. And then yeah, he just got completely ostracized out of the community after that. So I don't know what went on. I know the police didn't find anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, from what I recall from the whole situation, it was like there was a bunch of accusations, but there was like no solid proof. I remember LSV posting about it. Like, that's how I heard about it, was his post on Channel Fireball saying, pretty much like in a nice way, saying, hey, we think this guy might be stealing, so we let him go from the team.
Yeah,
and
it was ugly. It was really ugly with the fights between, because LSV is actually a
he's like an owner, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It just gets difficult with people selling. Like, I own a store, but it's just me and my buddy, and so there's the accountability is down to two people. So it's quite easy to figure out where things are, or we trust each other type thing. We both have the same vision of where we want it to go. But when you're as big as Channel Fireball and you have your content producers also helping out with the store, and then according to TSG's, like, I was running my own thing on the side. And so what they ended up seeing is he was selling cards on eBay, and then they were like, oh, where's he getting all these things from?
And they were like, oh, where are all of our Tamios?
Yeah.
Oh, he must be selling them.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's just it was a messy thing, but it was a good video between the Cobblade, because I barely lived during the Cobblade. That's when I restarted Magic, was at the very end of the Cobblade problem. And it didn't actually, they talk about how it got a lot better. It actually didn't get better after Cobblade was banned, because then it just became it's still Cobblade. People still played Cobblade just without Jace and Stoneforge missing. It was still the #1 deck, and it was still very hard to play against.
Right, because I remember there being like this weird Naya deck with like Lotus Cobras and Squadron Hawks and swords and stuff.
Yeah, but that one wasn't very. It was just still the blue. Right after they banned Cobblade, it was still blue, white Cobblade. Instead, they just put in more Gideons and just tried to stall and have Gideon be more of the finisher. And so it was still a very oppressive deck for a long time.
Oh well, that was the second emergency banning of the entire game. I don't know. I've been trying to do a lot of research into it, and it's really interesting actually, like reading into the articles from like 2011 of like Aaron Forsyth talking about why they banned it. And one of the things in there that I think I'm going to point out in this video coming up is, in that article they had said in a Grand Prix or whatever, the top 8 decks had 4 copies of Jason Mind Sculptor, and it reminded me of earlier last year how Smuggler's Copter was 4 copies in the top 8, and just kind of echoed the same. Both of them ended up getting banned.
Yeah, well, if you look at even recent, like 65% of decks have the Smuggler's Copter in it, and then the huge majority that don't have Smuggler's Copter have Emrakul in it. So it was one or the other, and there was a few, very, very few decks that didn't have either in it. And so, yeah, I think it was a right move. I actually think that this has been their most aggressive bannings, because if people lived during the time of... See, I don't know, was there no bannings in between the Mirrodin and Jace? Mirrodin? Because I played during that time too, and that was the most miserable thing ever.
Yeah.
When they created the artifact lands and Skull Clamp. And it was insanely powerful. And I quit playing Standard for that season, and I picked it back up for a little bit. Yeah, and then I just quit Magic. But at that point, I think I just quit Magic. Nothing personal towards the game. It was just I moved on in life to other things, and then I got back into Magic when Cobblade was powerful. So I actually have lived competitively through both of them.
Yeah, when I first started playing Magic was, if I remember correctly, the first cards I actually got was like a intro, or not an intro pack, but the little old starter decks that they would used to give before they started doing intro packs. It was Betrayers of Kamigawa. So I started playing, I'd probably say right around that same time where stuff was starting to get really bad, but I was casually playing, so I wasn't aware of the actual situation.
Yeah.
And I stopped playing because I lived in a super small town, and all of my friends stopped playing, so I had nothing to do with all my cards. So I came back into the game late 2010, early 2011, right when Cobblade came back around, but I wasn't playing competitively then either. It wasn't until about a year later when I started going to FNMs and playing seriously that I realized, oh, hey, I kind of came in and left during probably the 2 weakest times in Magic in terms of like player base, like showing up to events and stuff. I just think it was funny. Yeah, I think the Mirrodin artifact lands and that whole thing, there was the ban there, then there was Stoneforge, and then, yeah, Emrakul and Copter. I don't think there's been any other bannings in between.
Yeah, maybe some extended bannings. I think there was some. But, yeah, that's not relevant.
Yeah.
Extended was never popular. You'd have a few, like, Pro Tour qualifiers for it or something. I don't even know if it was relevant back then.
Yeah, I keep seeing people like when people talk about Frontier, I see other people talk about wanting to bring Extended back, but it's like, really? From what I understand, years ago, everyone hated Extended. Why would you want to bring something back that nobody liked?
Yeah. Yep. I agree with it. I talked to a guy that's a Facebook admin for Frontier, and he's really trying. He's spoken personally to Marrow and Zach Hill and some people about Frontier, and they're all on board that they want to start it after Origins rather than Khans of Tarkir and things like that. And yeah, I don't think they get that people like good mana, and that Khans of Tarkir was actually a beloved set. It's not a hated set. People liked that set.
Right, I really like the block.
And I think that's a mistake to start further on. Plus, we start further on, it will just feel like what Extended, even worse than Extended, used to feel like with what we have. We'll have Origins and maybe not even Dragons. It'll just be Origins on. And then that's just standard with Jace.
Right, it's just, yeah, standard with Jace. I mean, like, I guess it would make sense if they were to support the format like a year and a half from now, and
exactly.
And they were to say Origins forward. But yeah, now it's too much. It's too early, yeah.
And with the momentum, that just seems like it would kill the momentum with it. So I'm trying to keep the momentum alive, just because it's really the last bastion I have right now since I've given up on Modern.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it would be in Wizards' best interest to keep the Khans block in, at least the Khans block. I mean, M15 you don't have to keep in, but you might as well since you're
card frame.
Since you're doing the whole card frame. Yeah. But I think it would be a mistake to not have the Khans block, because let's say in a year from now they start to support the format. Well, that's already a year and a half, 2 years worth of people already used to a format, used to playing with fetch lands and buying into these cards, and these prices might have moved up as a result. And if Wizards is to say Magic Origins forward, I probably guess that a lot of people would not support the format if that was the case. It'd be like, oh, Wizards just slapped me in the face, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also, well, Marrow tweeted about it. 'Cause someone asked him about Frontier, and he tweeted that he doesn't think that fetch lands are good for the format. And I'm like, okay, well then you have to, right now, commit not to reprint fetch lands. And I think it's going to be way too tempting for Wizards to have another money grab set.
Yeah.
So either we get used to them now, or we have them upon us later to disrupt the metagame, because it will.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I guess I could see a situation where they would ban the fetch lands, like, as like a way to start the format, kind of like what they did with Modern. When they started Modern, they started with a preemptive ban list. I guess maybe they could go ahead and consider banning the fetch lands in that situation, but other than that, yeah, they would need to not print the Zen fetches in a standard set if Marrow's going to stick to his guns. Then again, Marrow isn't necessarily the head of WotC. He's like, what, the head of R&D or something like that?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so I don't know. It might be up to Hasbro, who's like, this Frontier thing is getting a whole lot of hype. We're going to put the fetch lands in and make people buy into it. I would not be surprised if that was like a Hasbro move.
Had a 240-man tournament on a Sunday in Japan.
Jeez.
It's I think it's here to stay. And Haruya doesn't care. They don't care if Wizards says anything. They are the face of Magic in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what I was going to say is Channel Fireball, I heard, is starting to do Frontier side events now.
Yeah, and Channel Fireball, if anyone wants to accuse anyone of money grabbing, those articles seem so like forced. They've made all the writers do an article on Frontier. So Eric Froelich did one, and a few other the Channel Fireball. I think Eric Froelich's on multiple ones. All their Deck of the Days, which is, I guess, an ongoing. I don't read a lot of Channel Fireball, but their Deck of the Days for the past month have all been Frontier.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Efro is the one who does Deck of the Day, and yeah, from what I understand, they've been paying a lot more attention to Frontier. Star City, on the other hand, I haven't really seen them talk about it at all. But then again, Star City's got their own problems with their own event scheduling and stuff. So.
Star City Games was one of the last to be on board with Modern as well. They were really pushing it that they were not going to abandon Legacy.
and then look at what's happening now. Like, what was it like their flagship legacy events? They've cut down on them, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I'm not. I know that Legacy is still, according to a lot of players, Legacy is more popular than it's ever been.
Hmm.
But that's probably because there's more players than there have ever been.
Right, and not actual interest in the format. Like, I mean, like there's probably the same amount of interest, but
Yeah.
but it's just people who don't want to pay $3,500 for
Yep.
miracles or
They get the
whatever.
hardcore players, the players that it's almost like a status thing to be playing in Legacy.
Hmm.
That's how Vintage is too. Vintage is just like a club type.
I was gonna say like if I were to ever play Vintage, or like even if I had the cards, I don't think I'd ever actually play with them. I would just play with proxies instead, because who would in their right mind play with that expensive of cards in like
Yeah.
a giant convention hall with people you don't know? It's just like, nah, just keep that stuff locked up. Play your Vintage on Magic Online and stuff. I don't know. It just never made a whole lot of sense to me. But I mean, like, if people spend so much money on these cards, they might as well get their mileage out of them and play with them.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a guy in Salt Lake that when I lived up there come to our store and want to play Vintage against everyone. And I remember when he played in standard tournaments, he was god awful. He was just good. He was good with his a lot of Vintage decks are all about sequencing, all
Hmm.
about knowing scenarios. Do this if this. It's like, so people that are good at sequencing are good at. It's like chess. Once chess gets to a certain competitive level, it loses some of its skill type. It becomes more of, do you know the right sequence than can you outthink, type thing. I'm sure when it gets up to the high, there's a ton of the skill, but just like the more amateur chess, once people get up to it, it's, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna
That's how
say.
he was with this, and he had no ability to adapt to standard. He was so bad.
He's just so
Uh,
used to playing Vintage and having a Vintage mindset that
yep.
Standard just was foreign language to him.
Yeah, yep. And it's just so that was my first kind of influence that I never wanted to play Legacy or Vintage because it was just these grouchy old people that couldn't, didn't seem to have a creative bone in their body because they were so used to. They've been playing these decks for years. He's been playing that deck since 10 years before this. He hasn't even had to make one change to it. That's why he likes it. Like, ugh, that sounds miserable for Magic. Because I consider myself, I was a drafter before I was a Standard player. And the only reason I got into Standard was when they got rid of the Planeswalker points, or the ELO from the DCI rating. So
I,
you used to
I
be able to qualify with just either your constructed or your limited rating. If one of
mhm.
them was high enough, you'd qualify. And even though I never went to big tournaments, it was still kind of like a bragging right that I was one of the highest in the state of Utah with the limited rating, and my constructed rating was barely above average just because I never played. And when I did, it was just to goof around because it didn't affect the limited. And so when they got rid of when they killed my limited rating for Planeswalker points, and all of the major tournaments and all the major ways to get Planeswalker points were standard, then I switched over.
Yeah, wasn't that old system? Didn't that also coincide with oh, what was it? Those old promotional cards that they would send in the mail?
I'm not sure because I never even signed up for that. I think that was like when I got back in around that Cobblade time. I think it was already discontinued at that point. It might have just been at the very end of it. But I think you just got those cards for just participating in enough events. It almost was like Planeswalker points in a way. The ELO rating was based on like chess or the college football uses an ELO type system.
I don't think I'm really
German
familiar with it.
ELO is just you win if like say everyone starts at 1600. If a 1600 plays a 1600, then the winner will get 7 points. The loser will minus 7 points.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but like if a 1650 plays a 1525, then the points on the line are a lot different. If you lose to someone lower you, it's going to be more than 7. If you win against someone that's higher than you, it's going to be more than 7. And so it tries to equal it out based upon rather than just numbers of wins and number of losses. You can actually go find a pro ELO right now for Magic the Gathering to see actually who I think BBD was by far the highest at this point. And it just calculates like strength of opponent rather than just pure wins and losses. Because right now with like this, even the pro points, it really is the grinders, the people that are to every GP are going to come out on top just because they're going to have more opportunities to score points rather than how good their skill is comparison to other players. So a lot of people have been very critical of both the pro points and the planeswalker points system because it just incentivized grind. But the ELO rating was killing the local scenes especially because someone would just sit on the rating and they'd be see for me, for example, I remember I went to a pre-release and I went 7-2 and lost points.
Really?
Because it was my strength of opponents were so bad that 7 wins gained me like no points, and those 2 losses actually minus more points than I gained. And so a lot of pros were like, I won't even compete in a local level thing because I don't want to screw up my rating. Because I used to be able to qualify based on rating. And it stuck around for years. So
makes sense why they'd want to get rid of it then, but I don't think Planeswalker Points is a decent substitute either.
But it doesn't really matter that much anyway since they only offer 2 buys and it doesn't qualify you for anything. So
right, there's almost no incentive for like the base casual level player. It's more geared towards higher professional level play.
And higher professional people will have it just because they're in enough events. So I quit. I used to grind for it when I used to travel more and try to play in like Grand Prix especially because that's all they're useful for is Grand Prix. That's it. It's just the 1 or 2 buys that you get. And one is pretty attainable just by going to FNMs. 2 is nearly impossible unless you're going to play a lot of events of Grand Prix and whatnot.
You might have better luck just trying to go to a GPT the day before or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've been. Usually if I care that much about buys, because now all you can get is 2, and usually you have 1 from just playing at FNM. So do I really want to spend all that time just for 1 more round? A lot of and especially since it's round 1, where that's usually not even that hard of a round.
All right, so for the following conversation, we had actually just finished playing a Frontier game on MTGO for both of our channels. If you want to go ahead and go check that out, you can. It's on my channel. It'll be Frontier gameplay. It'll probably be like 2 or 3 videos behind this one. But yeah, what's about to follow is our conversation after that game. Hey there. Yeah, I totally forgot that I had returned Crackling Doom. Or was that the Crackling Doom that you might have drawn into?
I don't think you had information of Crackling Doom in my hand.
Okay, because I was trying to play around Crackling Doom, but I was also trying to keep in mind how many Crackling Dooms you had used before I cast Learn from the Past. And
I had Trips in my hand, discarded one.
Okay.
To Gearreach Sanitarium. That's the only one you saw going in the graveyard. I think you might have saw one off of the Commune that was exiled. Yeah, I've had 2 Crackling Dooms in my hand for quite a while.
Oh man, yeah, I was post game 2 post sideboarding. I boarded out my only 2 creatures in the main board, which is Green Warden and Sphinx of the Final Word, because those just seem really bad against Crackling Doom.
Green Warden's okay. I think Green Warden would have been a okay card because it can get back, and it does pressurize. A lot of my spells don't. Even a Crackling Doom, that's still basically 3 for 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I brought in 1 Naturalize because I thought I was only going to need 1 to take care of Goggles, but the Virulent Plague is kind of what did me in. If it wasn't for that, I would be able to cast Rise from the Tides, but yeah, the Virulent Plague is what definitely got me. Or not definitely got me, I should say Goggles is what definitely got me, because that was insane. I don't think I had ever seen you play that deck before, and yeah, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, Goggles, the way I actually fought through 4 dig through times against a deck.
Oh, geez.
Because the Commune actually drew me more cards than the 4 dig through times did. And it's a lot of times just main phasing, like I always do with the Commune, making sure it doesn't get negated or dispelled or something. And then you can play a land drop off of if you haven't played one that turn. Mm-hmm. And so I'll even Commune for like 3 sometimes and just hope to hit a land drop. And if there's not really a lot of dead cards you can hit with it because you have an entire turn to then cast them.
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty sweet card, very underrated card. But
Yeah, I was gonna say that seems sweet, especially with the build that you have around it, like the whole goggles with commune with lava. I totally forgot about that card because I used to work in a shop and I would organize cards and I'd be like, and I would see commune with lava. I was like, this is a really sweet card. I think this card is somewhat playable in some sort of deck somewhere. And then here we are getting blown out by it.
yeah, it's been a favorite of mine for a while. It's been very hard to make it work, but both goggles and Chandra are really cool with the commune, because the Chandra plussing for mana is very relevant with commune.
Yeah.
You hit it even on turn 5. You have 5 mana, that makes it 7. Then you're communing for 5. That is really good.
Yeah, that just all. Yeah, the deck seemed sweet, especially with the whole Goblin Dark Dwellers thing. I was also trying to play around that as well. I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, how do I get around Goblin Dark Dwellers? Because my game 1, I was thinking to myself, like, what could it be getting with Nahiri the Harbinger? I was like, I've only seen Goblin Dark Dwellers, and guessing from what I've seen in the deck, he might not be running Emrakul, so he might be getting another Dark Dwellers.
I commented on that. I'm like, that's the big key to running Nahiri in some decks is like it's usually the wrong play for the opponents to attack into my Nahiri, but it's never the wrong play to attack into most people's Nahiri. So everyone has been Emrakuled by Nahiri. They're not going to allow Nahiri to tick up. But with my deck, it's like, man, just get a Goblin. It's fun though. You get a Goblin Dark Dwellers, it casts something, then it comes back. So it's Nahiri is really in here to get rid of pesky artifacts and enchantments especially. There are so many Jeskai Ascendancies and always watchings, impact tremors that are key to getting rid of.
Are there any impact tremor like combo decks?
Yeah, well, since I'm one of the very first creators that have been publishing Frontier, I think I've influenced the metagame quite a bit here on MTGO. I ran into 2 Impact Tremor decks today when recording my Gathering Magic video today.
Oh, sweet.
It's just Goblin Impact Tremors.
Oh, okay.
And because I think I went 3-1 for Gathering Magic last week with a budget. It was a $26 deck for Frontier.
That's really cheap.
Yeah, extremely cheap, and it was very powerful. And so I ran into that deck twice. Some people were running some different options when I was in P and Carondelar. I was like really on Impact Tremors, and a lot of people prefer the Goblin route with like Pile Driver and the Mardu 3-1, Mardu whatever that Goblin is, the 3-1 dash.
Oh, Mardu Scout, I think is what it's called.
Yep. But yeah, so and then people, of course, in my local game store now, since I built like 2 kids the exact same deck with, one of them is he wanted to upgrade his black red. He had like a black red Fabricate deck, a budget deck I built him for, like Reckless Bushwhacker, Pianalar, Weapon Enthusiast, or not Weapon Enthusiast. Weapon Enthusiast. That's the Fabricate one, right?
Yeah.
So it just tries to get a big Goblin, a Reckless Bushwhacker in Standard, and it's actually quite fast. But he wanted to upgrade it to Frontier. I'm like, well, Impact Tremors. Throw some Impact Tremors. So I'm used to playing against it. So that's the Nahiris were a later on addition in it. Today though was crazy though. I played against Jeskai Ascendancy. That deck is legit, and I killed 2 Cryptothrites and 2 Jeskai Ascendancies, and the 3rd and 4th Jeskai Ascendancy got me.
Oh man. So the Jeskai Ascendancy deck, is it like a Cryptolith right using Jeskai Ascendancy?
It's Temur Ascendancy, Jeskai Ascendancy, and Cryptolith right.
Interesting. And it's just like a 3-card combo.
Yeah, and they don't rely on it because you can still go crazy. There's Jeskai Ascendancy and Hordling Outbursts. Hordling Outbursts, Stoke the Flames, and Jeskai Ascendancy is a ton of damage.
Is Stoke the Flames in Frontier?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't. I thought it was in M14.
No, it's M15. Convoke was M15.
Oh, okay.
We have Court of Calling. We have Return to the Ranks, which I think is very underutilized right now.
Oh, that's that X and double white spell, right? Where you can get like creatures with CMC from your graveyard back or something like that.
Yeah, 2 or less. It has to have. You get X amount of creatures with converted mana cost 2 or less back. Right. So it's Rally gets whatever you set the converted mana cost back, and the the return gets like multiples back. So the more you dump into it, the more you get, back forever.
Right.
But there's a lot of decks, like Humans, for example, return is something that should be in every human sideboard.
Yeah, definitely. The would you say just mono white or like the green white as well?
Green white is fine. Yep, because it allows you to out value the Jace decks and the Esper Dragons, Teamer Dragons. Teamer Dragons is everywhere too.
There was this green-white humans list that I had seen somebody was using Return to the Ranks with it. It was an enchantment from Origins or M15, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like 2 and a green, and whenever you cast a non-token creature spell, you get to draw a card. Or whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, you draw a card.
Power 3 or greater? That's something I can think of.
Is it power 3 or greater?
Yeah.
I
play in my Animar deck. It's from Origins.
Okay, yeah, then it might be power 3 or greater then. Because I saw some deck that was utilizing that with Return from the Ranks. This was in previous Standard. This wasn't in Frontier. My mistake. And they were using Return from the Ranks to get back like Expedition, Envoy, and stuff. But now that I think about it, it makes me wonder why that enchantment was in there for.
Is that what it is? I thought it was 3 or greater. Maybe I'm thinking Garrick's Pack Leader. But I thought it did the exact same.
I think you might be right, and this person might have just shoved random enchantments into their humans
There was
deck.
a lot of 3/1s though in the set.
Mm-hmm.
There were a ton of them back when it was legal.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thank you very much for playing with me, Kevin, and for talking with me about your Frontier deck.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation that Kevin and I had. So now I'm going to be going over the questions that I had you guys submit to me in Magic the Gathering group beforehand, before I started the podcast. So let's just go ahead and go over a few questions that I've picked out. So the first question comes from Gio Torres, who asks, what is your opinion on the new banned and restricted announcement, especially the standard bannings? So if I'm being honest, I kind of love the ban and restricted announcement, and if I'm being honest with you. Now, the reason why is because I love shakeup. I love change. For me, the only constant in life is change. There's 2 lines that I like to live by. That's the only constant in life is change and adapt or die. So whenever I hear a new ban and restricted announcement, and it's a big one, that actually kind of gets me really excited because, that shakes things up. And I know a lot of people are saying that Wizards only did these bannings to shake things up. And for me personally, I don't have a problem with it. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, and if you aren't aware at this point, you should probably crawl out from that rock that you live under. But if I can recall correctly, in Standard, Emrakul the Promised End, Smuggler's Copter, and Reflector Mage got banned. And in Modern, Gitaxian Probe and Golgari Grave Troll also got banned as well, with nothing being unbanned in any formats or anything like that. So let's just go over each card individually. So Emrakul, let's be honest, there was no graveyard hate in the format at all. And there was barely any cards that could actually deal with Emrakul, save from Declaration in Stone, Stasis Snare, and counterspells like Summary Dismissal, and that new one that was coming out in Aether Revolt called Disallow. But those aren't real actual answers to Emrakul, because regardless, they're slamming down this 13/13 flying with trample that'll take control of your turn. That just sucks. The fact that there was no answer in Standard for that just blows my mind, and that there wasn't one from 2 blocks afterwards. Well, that's assuming that there's going to be no graveyard hate in Amonkhet, but I'm assuming that there isn't any good graveyard hate in Amonkhet, or else maybe they wouldn't have banned Emrakul in the first place. So let's go over the next one, that being Smuggler's Copter. So to be honest, having a 2-mana 3/3 flying that can draw you cards is pretty good. But the fact that it's 5 color, essentially, meaning that you could just put it in any deck, I think just makes it a little too good. Now, if I'm being honest, I really don't think that it was banned fairly, because the card has only been out for 1 set, right? It came out in Kaladesh. And there were some answers to it. There was like Grasp of Darkness and there was like Harness Lightning. But beyond that, there wasn't really too many answers to actually deal with the card. Namely because it was a vehicle, and the inherent restrictions with vehicles is that you can pretty much only interact with them at instant speed. Now, we did happen to get one of the best removal spells ever printed, that being Fatal Push, and I feel like that could have helped keep Smuggler's Copter down significantly, so it makes no sense to me why they banned it when they had pretty much the perfect removal spell printed in Aether Revolt for it. Now, granted, it is a black spell, and Grasp of Darkness and Harness Lightning were already answers that could deal with it, so you could if you wanted to be able to deal with Smuggler's Copter, you'd have to build a restricted black deck or black-red deck if you really wanted to have all the answers to deal with Copter. So maybe that was the issue, is that it was just too restrictive in how you could deal with this threat that was available in a wide array of decks, right? So for the last card in Standard, we have Reflector Mage, and at first, I really did not like the fact that they banned it, but as I began to listen to more and more people talk about it, the gears began to turn in my head and things finally clicked for me. It was mainly because after reading Sam Stoddard's article, pretty much just talking about how dominant blue-white Flash was, and, if you're going to go out of your way of banning a card that is pretty much almost non-interactive in the format, that being Emrakul, and I'm talking about green-black Delirium here because, if we're being honest, that was pretty much the deck to fight blue-white Flash. I mean, there were other archetypes that could fight that deck, but green-black Delirium was pretty much the way to go against blue-white Flash. And if you're going to ban the best card in that deck that would pretty much guarantee you to win over Blue-White Flash, you got a problem with Blue-White Flash. I know I'm saying that a lot, but whatever. So the question becomes, do you ban Archangel Avacyn? And I don't think that would be a good idea because you would be banning the marquee card of Eldritch Moon along with the marquee card of Shadows over Innistrad, so that would not be good PR at all. But do you ban something like Spell Queller? And I think Patrick Chapin went over this really well in the Top Level podcast, and it was Spell Queller is essentially the force of will of Standard. It's kind of a necessary evil. It needs to be there. Even though Spell Queller is really annoying to deal with, Spell Queller takes care of a lot of problems in the format. It helps take care of Aetherworks Marvel. It takes care of both halves of the Copycat combo, and just a bunch of other super relevant cards in Standard. So that was the argument why Spell Queller shouldn't get the ban in Standard. Now, for Reflector Mage, we have to look at it from a technical perspective, right? We have a 2/3 body for 3 mana, that's alright on the curve. And having 3 toughness is actually pretty relevant in the Standard format. But whenever Reflector Mage enters the battlefield, it returns another target creature to its owner's hand. That doesn't seem like too powerful of an effect, right? It's just Vapor Snag or Unsummon on a stick, right? But the issue is that Reflector Mage locked your opponent from being able to recast that card, and that's just a really bad case of the feel bads, right? But the issue is that Reflector Mage pretty much locked that card into your hand for a full turn, and that would be really bad if you had multiples of that card in your hand. And not only that, but it was just such a good tempo play for the deck. Turn 3, you play that, you bounce your opponent's turn 2 or turn 3 play, and then you follow it up with a Gideon, and then you follow that up with an Avacyn at the end of their turn, and they're just done at that point, especially if they already had a Smuggler's Copter already on the board that they could crew with tokens made by Gideon. It gets too overwhelming too fast. And ultimately, I feel like it was just a byproduct of there not being enough answers for everything in Standard. I don't think Reflector Mage probably wasn't tested that much in the Future League, or if they had made a blue-white Flash archetype and they realized we have too many good threats and too many answers for one deck. It just became this Swiss Army knife of being able to do everything. So it makes total sense for me that they would get the axe in the format so that way other decks could grow and blossom. Now, I'm not saying Blue-White Flash is dead. If anything, I still feel like Blue-White Flash is very, very playable because it's still, again, it has access to stuff like Archangel Avacyn and Spell Queller. Now, granted, Blue-White Flash might not be, it might not stay as that deck. It might turn into Bant or Jeskai or I don't know, some other random thing, or it might even just become an even better deck because of the stuff printed in Aether Revolt. I don't know. It just time will only tell with stuff like this in the format. But as far as standard bannings go, I'm actually really glad that Wizards is taking the initiative to step up and mitigate the metagame and just stand in and take control of their product, essentially. You know, you have people bitching all the time, and that's normal in Magic. People are always going to complain about a metagame all the time. But I feel like in this specific instance, with this context where there's a 13/13 flying trampler that can get out onto the battlefield if you have enough stuff in your graveyard without graveyard hate, that's a problem. If you have a 3/3 flyer for 2 mana that can go in any deck that there aren't that many answers to, that's a problem. If you're printing a 2/3 for 3 that can lock your opponent's game like plan out, that's also a problem. So it makes total sense for me like why it's all banned, and in hindsight, I kind of agree with all of them. But we wouldn't have gone to this problem if we had printed the answers in the first place. Who said that? I think it was Saffron Olive who said that. And I can't help but agree with the guy. So as far as Modern goes, I really don't play the format too much. But Gitaxian Probe, I've always had an issue with that card. It's not that I don't like it. I really like Gitaxian Probe. Whenever I did play Modern, I really liked playing with the card because it's essentially a free cantrip and a free opportunity to look at your opponent's hand, right? And that's why it was so good in decks like Death Shadow Zoo and Storm and like the Prowess decks and what was the big one that it was in? I can't really remember right now for the life of me because it's escaping me. I think I may have already said it, but regardless, the card was a problem card in my opinion because it goes back to that issue of Phyrexian mana. You know, when you look at a card like Mental Misstep, which is just a huge error in Magic design, being able to counter a lightning bolt for free in any deck, it kind of breaks the rules of Magic. And I feel Gitaxian Probe pretty much does the exact same thing. Instead of countering a spell, you get to have a peak for all 5 colors. Peak being 1 mana, blue mana. You probably already know what peak is. Anyways, moving on to the next card, Golgari Grave Troll. You know, I can't really say that I'm surprised that Wizards would ban a Dredge card. They've always had their eye on Dredge ever since they first made it a mechanic because, let's be honest, Dredge is kind of I mean, like for a year and a half, Golgari Grave Troll being unbanned, it was perfectly fine in the metagame. But it was the introduction of Cathartic Reunion and Prized Amalgam that totally pushed Golgari Grave Troll over the top. And not really over the top, just the entire Dredge deck itself over the top. And Golgari Grave Troll being the biggest offender of them all, you know, being able to dredge 6, it can really get your deck going, right? So it makes sense why they banned it again in the format, and you know, players will just replace it with Golgari Thug or whatever. And so yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the bannings. I don't really have that much to say about the Modern bannings because again, it's not a format that I don't really play that often. So the next question we have comes from Bell Targon. Sorry if I got your name wrong, but he asks, what is your opinion on the state of Pauper either as a metagame or as a WotC supported format? And okay, I can tell what you're asking. What do I think of the metagame and what do I think of it as being supported by WotC as an official format? And to answer your first question, I'm looking at the top 4 decks in Pauper right now. I mean, it's not like I don't understand the format. I do. I play Pauper a lot. If I'm being honest, it might be my most favorite format in all of Magic besides Commander because it has the complexity and play level of Legacy, but only being at a budget of $20, and I just absolutely love it for that. But looking at the top 4 decks, we have Dimir Control, Kodotha Boros, Mono Blue Delver, and Murasa Tron, and I'm looking at the MTG Goldfish Pauper metagame. And so for the first deck, we have Dimir Control, and it's a blue-black control deck that kind of utilizes ETB effects with like Mole Drifter and stuff like that, and like Seagate Oracle, and you're just chaining value out of it. And that's kind of funny because Chainer's Edict is in the deck, but I think it's like a fine control deck. I don't think it's too overpowered or anything like that. And like I feel the same way about every other deck in the format. Like, yeah, Kuldotha Boros is kind of annoying because it can just play such a good long game. And same with Mono Blue Delver. I also feel like Mono Blue Delver also plays an exceedingly well long game. Like, I feel like all the top decks in Pauper can do that. Like, the aggro decks, if you're not Stompy or Burn, you're going to have a tough time with aggro in the format. Like, even though all the creatures are kind of small to begin with, Pauper really is kind of I don't want to say mid-range, but it's definitely not over fast. Pauper games kind of take a while, and that's why I said it has the play style of Legacy. You know, you need to be able to sequence your turns and think of plays pretty far ahead, especially if you know what you're doing in the format. Now, you could say the same for pretty much every other format, Magic the Gathering, but I feel like that is more so with Pauper than anything else. And yeah, you know, you have your Tron decks, which, you know, I do have a problem with, because I feel like having that kind of mana available in Pauper is kind of an issue, but at the same time, it's not too overwhelming of a strategy. So I could bitch about it all that I want, but at the same time, I think it's totally fine. And to answer the second part of your question, should it be WotC supported? Yes, I feel like it should be officially supported by WotC, if not like having like Channel Fireball is, from what I understand, they're hosting Frontier events. I feel like they should totally do the same for Pauper. Like, I also understand that if they were to do that, it costs money. But I feel like because of how accessible Pauper is, I feel like it could be incredibly popular just because it's so accessible. And people, well, they like to play Magic. The Magic players, they like to play Magic. And spiky players who can't, you know, afford Legacy or Vintage or Modern decks even, they can go spend $50 on a Pauper deck and they're good to go. Or they can go spend $200 on pretty much all the staples of the Pauper format and be able to play whatever deck they want. You know, I think that's awesome for the format, and it blows my mind how WotC hasn't actually supported it as a format. And I think I already know the answer why, and that's because Pauper doesn't sell packs. It's all commons, right? You don't pull any rares from your packs and throw it into your Pauper deck, because you can't, because it's a common only format, and commons themselves aren't worth a whole lot of money. So if you were to buy, let's say, a box of Kaladesh, right, and you wanted to get all the commons that you could out of Kaladesh for your Pauper collection, well, you could probably just buy a box of Kaladesh and you just have it all right there. That's not what Wizards wants. They want you to be able to buy like 2-3 times that amount before, you know, you've had your fill. So I think that's why it hasn't been officially supported by Wizards of the Coast yet, like as a physical format. Magic the Gathering Online, I'm really glad that they support it there, because without it, I don't think Pauper would be where it is today. So this one comes from Ethan Daniel, which I think it's Ethan Daniel, but he asks, do you think WotC realizes the negative impact frequent bannings have on games? Example, providing Yu-Gi-Oh! And to be honest, I don't think I agree with you, because I feel like not hyper banning, but increasing the amount of bannings, especially for Standard, I think will kind of help keep it healthy. Now, I don't want to eat my own words with that. I don't think there should be bans to begin with. I feel like there should be answers in the format first before there needs to be bans. But if there needs to be bans, they should do that. They should ban whenever something, you know, becomes too dominant. And that's a fine line that you ride. Like, what's too dominant? Was Collected Company too dominant? And I mean, like, I know Sam Stoddard said that in his article where he said Collected Company was too dominant, but you could apply that same logic to what was that Devotion to Black guy, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, or Pack Rat, or like any other strategy like that beforehand. Like, if you want to go even further back, you could complain about Delver of Secrets when blue-white Delver was a huge issue, and like pretty much all the Delver decks were just really bad. So you have to think like what constitutes a ban, right? Is it because there's not enough answers in the format, or is it because the format has become so homogenized into certain archetypes that there's so little variance in the actual metagame itself that it's causing people to get away from the game? Then obviously that's an issue. But I feel like Wizards of the Coast, with this new precedent that they're taking with bannings, is very positive in my opinion. I don't think that they're going to be ban happy and they're going to try and ban something like once every set release or something. If anything, I hope Wizards doesn't have to ban anything like once a year. I hope that they would do something like once every 2 years, given that if there was an environment like that they would need to ban a card. Again, I'm trying to get back to the point of I'm glad that Wizards is taking the initiative to ban cards when they need to be banned. So this one comes from Ken Shockley, and when I asked for questions, I said that they didn't all have to be serious. And since I already said that, I will ask a more funny question. And Ken Shockley asks, is teabagging your opponent after winning your match with Hedron alignment appropriate? And I don't think that not only teabagging is appropriate, but I think you also need to do like the Ric Flair, like, woo! Like, my dad is asleep right now, so I don't want to yell. But yeah, you got to do that whole Ric Flair, woo! Thing while teabagging your opponent. So this next question comes from Adam McBride, and he says, for players with little opportunity to play Paper Magic, would now be a decent time to invest in MTGO? Should we wait for Wizards of the Coast to improve it, or make a better version of Magic Online? And I don't know if it would be a good time to invest in Magic the Gathering Online, only because of Magic Digital Next. Now, this contradicts what I just said, but I also don't think it's a good idea to be scared of Magic Digital Next, right? This kind of doesn't relate to the question you're asking, but with Magic Digital Next, whatever it's going to be, it's obviously going to be the new focus once it's out. And for me personally, if they don't allow some sort of system where you can transfer your collection over to Magic Digital Next, whatever it's going to be, or at least like some sort of monetary equivalent, then I'm probably not going to do anything with it. I might just leave it behind and leave MTGO behind. But there's a part of me in the back of my head that thinks once Magic Digital Next goes online, that Magic the Gathering Online itself will still be up for at least maybe a year, another 2 years afterwards, before Wizards of the Coast force every online player to play Magic Digital Next. So if you are going to make an investment into Magic the Gathering Online, I would say do the same thing I did and invest in pauper decks. Magic the Gathering Online is significantly cheaper than the paper version, especially with pauper, save for a few cards like the Elemental Blast and like Gorilla Shaman and stuff like that. Besides that, I feel like if you were to get into anything else regarding Magic the Gathering Online, playing what is that format called? Momir Vig. You buy a little Momir Vig avatar, and then you can just have random fun games. Just look it up on Google. But if you are going to play on Magic the Gathering Online, I would suggest keeping your investment small. Try to keep it at least under $100. Unless you're really desperate to play standard or modern online, then go for it. But at the same time, I have this sneaking suspicion in the back of my head that they're probably going to leave everything in Magic the Gathering Online behind as they move forward for Magic Digital Next. So if that means it's just going to be standard only for that program, all us pauper players are kind of fucked, right? And for your second question, should we wait for Wizards to improve it or make a better version of Magic Online? If you would have asked me this question a week ago, I would have said no, because they're as slow as molasses when it comes to improving their online client. But they also did make that statement where they're essentially cleaning house and bringing in a bunch of coders and developers, and I can't think of the words correctly because that's not my expertise, but they're bringing in a bunch of other people from like Activision and Blizzard and Direwolf Digital and stuff like that to work on their online products. And they also, from what I understand, either Worth Wolpert, the head of Magic the Gathering Online, either quit or resigned. My guess is they probably forced him to quit. So if the head of Magic the Gathering Online is gone, that means that they're serious about changing at least their appearance about how they treat their online products. So to answer your question, I do think that they probably will improve it. Just it will still take a while. It'll just probably come a little bit faster, and it might look a little bit better, if not significantly, because of how serious that they're taking their properties now. Jorel Hoffer asks, which is better, draft or sealed? And let me be honest, I don't like either. And I just kind of want to put that out there publicly. I prefer constructed over limited entirely. But if I had a gun against my head and I had to choose between draft or sealed, I would pick draft, because I feel like draft requires more out of you as a player than sealed does, because sealed you get a limited amount of cards from your pool, and you have to build with that. Now, that also tests your skills as a deck builder, being able to find all of the playable cards and strategies and synergies out of your entire pool that you get. But with draft, there's so much more that goes into it. You have to be able to read the cards as you draft them, and I don't mean literally. I mean like being able to tell, like try and guess like what's being taken, what's a good time to like get out or get in of a color, and how to prioritize certain cards over others, and trying to guess which ones might come back around and stuff like that. And while that is fun, for me personally, it's not. I prefer to just worry about constructed Magic, and I can understand why people love limited, because like I said, it's so much more deeper than what constructed is. And that's probably incorrect, because constructed has its own depth of gameplay as well, with like metagaming and stuff like that. But as far as limited goes, it's just not my cup of tea, but I can totally understand why other people are totally into it. So that's the inaugural episode of the podcast. Let me know what you guys think about it. I'm definitely going to be experimenting with it in the future. And remember, this is going to be a monthly podcast. I'm aiming to shoot to upload it on the 15th of every month. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. And I'll definitely take all of your criticisms into consideration, because this is something that I definitely want to work with along with my channel, obviously, and try to improve over time. Anyways, I've been TastySnackies. You all have been wonderful, and I'll catch you on the flip side.